The phone rang just as I was carefully placing small handwritten place cards next to the simple, elegant floral arrangements on the tables. Each card represented a person who would be present at the culmination of my journey, my wedding, a small, intimate ceremony in a beautiful garden. Just what Daniel and I wanted. Just who we wanted. The air was already filled with the scent of blooming roses and the quiet anticipation of joy. I felt a sense of profound peace, a fragile but beautiful calm. Then I saw the caller ID. Mom. My hand hovered over the phone. A familiar knot tightened in my stomach. Conversations with my mother with my family were rarely simple. They were often minefields of unspoken expectations, veiled criticisms, and a history of hurt that lingered just beneath the surface. But this was different. This was wedding stuff. Maybe she had a question about the dietary restrictions I'd noted or the timing of the ceremony. Maybe, just maybe, she was calling to express excitement. I pushed down the familiar apprehension, took a deep breath, and answered, trying to infuse my voice with warmth. Hi, Mom. Everything okay? Just finishing up some last-minute details here. Her voice, even through the phone line, was a physical shock. It was tight, strained, devoid of any warmth, laced with something cold and sharp, accusation, barely suppressed fury. Evelyn, she said, each syllable clipped. What is the meaning of this? I demand to know. My mind raced, trying to grasp what could possibly warrant this tone. What had happened? Did something go wrong? Meaning of what, Mom, is something wrong? Did you not get the rehearsal dinner details? Don't you play innocent with me, Evelyn Ramirez. Her voice rose sharp and piercing, completely shattering the peaceful atmosphere of my afternoon. The invitations, we got them. Well, not us, not your father and I, of course. But your Aunt Carol did your father's sister. She called your father yesterday, asking about the dress code, saying how lovely the invitation was. She got hers a big, beautiful invitation to your wedding. Aunt Carol, my father's sister, whom I saw maybe once a year at Thanksgiving or Christmas. A distant relative kind in her way, but not someone I shared my life with. Yes, I'd sent her an invitation. She was family, wasn't she, in the broadest sense? Yes, Mom, I said, my voice cautious now, the familiar knot in my stomach twisting tighter. Aunt Carol is invited. She's family. But we aren't, she shrieked, the pretense of calm completely gone, replaced by raw, unadulterated rage. Your own mother and father, your brothers, Michael, Chris, Josh, your sister, Rachel, none of us got invitations, not one. Why, Evelyn, what the hell do you think you're doing? Excluding your own family. Her voice was shrill with shock and outrage, echoing the sentiment I knew was spreading like wildfire through the family grapevine. Humiliation, public humiliation. A distant aunt got an invitation, and her own immediate family, the people who had supposedly raised me, the people who felt entitled to a starring role in my life, were deliberately left off the list. They weren't just not invited, they were pointedly excluded, while others who were less central to their world were included. They felt the sting of being the other, a sting I knew all too well. My own calm in that moment was unsettling even to me. It wasn't a lack of emotion. It was the result of years of suppressed pain hardening into an unyielding core of resolve. It was the quiet strength of someone who had already lived through the worst kind of exclusion. I didn't scream back. I didn't cry. My voice was low, steady, and held a chilling edge I hadn't known it possessed. Why aren't you invited, Mom? I repeated the question, hanging in the air between us, loaded with years of unspoken history. I think the reason is pretty clear. Clear it's not clear at all. We are your family. Your blood, we raised you, we sacrificed for you, and you exclude us from your wedding. Your own mother exclude you. I said, a bitter, humorless laugh escaping my lips, the sound catching me by surprise. You want to talk about exclusion, Mom? You taught me everything I know about exclusion. My words seemed to finally pierce through her initial barrage of anger, shocking her into temporary silence. She sputtered, searching for a response, her accusations momentarily halted by sheer disbelief. Why, Evelyn? She finally managed her voice, regaining some of its accusatory tone, but now laced with genuine, albeit self-pitying hurt. Why are you doing this? To us, trying to hurt us? Trying to make a scene on your wedding day? A scene. I felt the years of buried pain begin to surface, not as tears that would signal weakness, but as cold, hard truth that would expose their actions. You want to talk about a scene, Mom? This isn't a scene. This is just the guest list. A list of the people who will stand by me as I make the most important promise of my life. A list of the people who have actually been there for me. You're, the guest list. Such a simple logistical thing for most people. But for me, it was the culmination of a lifetime of being left out, of being the sister who was never quite enough, never quite included. It was an act of reclaiming my own narrative. To understand why a wedding invitation, a small piece of cardstock, became the spark that ignited a firestorm. I said, my voice shifting, becoming distant, reflective, telling the story not just to her, but to the quiet garden around me, to the past I was finally confronting, and why I was more than ready for the battle that followed. I have to go back, way back, to the family who taught me unintentionally what it felt like to be consistently, deliberately left behind. I was the youngest of 5 born significantly later than my siblings. There were big age gaps between me and Michael, Chris, Josh, and Rachel. By the time I was old enough to form concrete memories to participate in family conversations, they were teenagers or young adults navigating high school, college, first jobs, first apartments. Their lives were already in motion, complex and independent. I was the tag-along the kid sister who was always just there, a residual presence. I loved them fiercely. Despite the distance, the age gap, the separate worlds we inhabited, I looked up to them. They were my older siblings, the people who had already navigated the mysterious path of growing up. I thought they were the coolest people in the world. I longed to be part of their lives, to understand their jokes, to be included in their plans. But there was always that barrier. They were the main characters of their own exciting stories, and I was just a small, quiet figure in the background, watching from afar. I felt like an outsider in my own home, a weird little caboose attached to a train that had already left the station without realizing it had an extra car. As they got older, their lives moved faster. Their milestones came quicker. And the gap between us widened with each passing year, each new achievement, each new relationship. The first time it happened, the first time I felt the sharp sting of deliberate exclusion. I was 10 years old. My oldest brother, Michael, the one I admired most, the one who occasionally, if he was in a good mood, would ruffle my hair or tell me a silly joke, announced he was getting married to his college sweetheart, Sarah. A wedding, a real grown-up wedding. The very idea filled me with childish excitement. I imagined myself dressed up in a pretty dress, sitting in a pew, watching my big brother say, "I do." It was a fantasy straight out of a movie. Then came the family meeting. Mike and Sarah had decided on an adults-only wedding. No children allowed. My 10-year-old brain simply couldn't comprehend that this applied to me. I wasn't just some random kid, a cousin's child who might cry or cause a fuss. I was his sister, his only sister. Surely that was different. Surely they would make an exception for me. Mom and Dad sat me down gently, their faces sympathetic but firm. "Evelyn, sweetheart, Mike and Sarah's wedding, it's going to be a grown-up event. They've decided no kids allowed." My world, that simple 10-year-old world built on trust and expectation, crumbled around me. But I'm your sister. I remember pleading, the tears welling up, instantly blurring my vision. "I'm family. I won't be any trouble. I promise I'll be quiet. I'll sit still for the whole thing." They tried to explain, to soothe me, using words meant to soften the blow but only making it worse. "It's not personal, honey. It's the rule." They want it to be a certain kind of celebration. It's expensive to add extra guests. They're having a smaller reception. But to a 10-year-old being excluded from her own brother's wedding, a major family event is personal. It felt like a definitive, painful statement. You don't belong. You are just a child, a logistical inconvenience, not a sister who matters enough to bend the rules for. I cried myself to sleep that night, feeling heartbroken, rejected, and utterly insignificant. The fantasy of the pretty dress and the church pew was replaced by the cold reality of being left out. When Mike came back from his honeymoon, tanned and happy, he never mentioned that I hadn't been there. It solidified the feeling that my absence, my feelings, my very existence at that moment didn't even register on his radar. 2 years later, when I was 12, my brother Chris got engaged. I was older, quieter, more aware of social cues. I had spent those 2 years trying to be the perfect, well-behaved, not-a-child sister. I kept my hopes in check, building a quiet wall around my heart, but deep down, I yearned for an invitation. Maybe this time would be different. Maybe Chris would see me differently. It wasn't. Another adults-only wedding, another polite exclusion. "It's not personal, Evelyn." I heard again the words like a dull ache, now familiar and unwelcome. "It's just how they want to do it. Simpler." He tried to soften it by promising to show me pictures. Pictures weren't the same as being there. I had learned not to cry in front of them. I didn't beg. I just nodded, a painful knot forming in my chest, accepting the exclusion with a silent burning agony. My mother's attempts at comfort felt hollow. They didn't erase the fundamental message of my unimportance in their adult lives. The wall around my heart grew a little higher. When I was 15, Rachel, my only sister, got engaged. This felt different. A sister's wedding. Surely my sister, who I shared a room with for a time, who I saw almost every day, would want me there. I was a teenager now, navigating the complex social world of high school, desperate to be seen as an adult, to be included in the family's inner circle, the one where decisions were made and important events were shared. Rachel was initially planning a more inclusive wedding, wanting her younger cousins there. But then family politics intervened. Aunts and uncles pressured her about the formality of the event, the expense, the potential for noise and disruption. "It's not a proper elegant event with children running around." I overheard one of my aunts say to Mom on the phone. The compromise Rachel reached: no one under 16. I was 15, just 1 year shy, one single agonizing year. It felt less like an arbitrary cutoff and more like a deliberate slap in the face, a cruel twist of fate engineered by family pressure. So close, yet still excluded, because I wasn't the right age for their convenience, for their definition of an adult event. I couldn't stay silent this time. The injustice, the cumulative weight of being excluded from all their weddings for different reasons, but always because I was deemed too young, too much of a child, too inconvenient. It snapped something inside me. I went to Rachel, my voice shaking, not with tears, but with frustration and a desperate pleading hope. "Rachel, please! I'm 15, almost 16. I'm your sister. Can't I be an exception? I promise I'll be quiet and well-behaved. I'll sit at the adult table. I just want to be there. It's your wedding." Rachel, caught between pleasing her extended family and my heartfelt plea, ultimately chose the path of least resistance. "I'm sorry, Evie," she said, using the childhood nickname I longed to leave behind, a reminder of the little girl she still saw. It wouldn't be fair to all the other cousins under 16, like Marco's kids. We have to draw a line. The rule is 16. Fair was excluding your little sister from your wedding because she was 1 year too young for an arbitrary cutoff drawn by relatives who barely knew me. The unfairness of it all, the raw pain of being consistently excluded from all their weddings because I was always the wrong age, always the child, always the afterthought. It broke through the walls I had built. I erupted. Tears came then. Not just quiet sobs, but hot, angry tears. I didn't just cry. I shouted, expressing years of hurt frustration and feeling like an afterthought, a burden, an inconvenient fact of their lives. It's not fair that you all get to have these huge milestones. And I'm always stuck on the outside looking in because I was born later, because I'm the youngest. You don't care how it makes me feel. None of you ever have. The confrontation was ugly. Words were said that couldn't be unsaid. My parents stepped in not to mediate, not to understand my pain, but to enforce their authority and punish my outburst. They saw my reaction not as the expression of deep accumulated hurt, but as disrespect. Disrespect to Rachel. Disrespect to them, creating unnecessary drama at a stressful time. My punishment grounded for 6 months. No going out, no seeing friends, nothing. 6 months of isolation in my room, stewing in my anger, my hurt, my profound sense of injustice and misunderstanding. That isolation solidified my feelings. It was in that forced solitude, the time alone with my thoughts and my pain, that the bitterness took root, wrapping itself around the wounded 10-year-old child inside me. It wasn't fair. It was never fair. By the time Josh, the second youngest brother, got engaged when I was 17, I didn't even bother to ask. I had learned my lesson. I knew the answer. Another adults-only wedding. Another event I would watch from the sidelines, hearing about it secondhand, seeing the pictures later. The announcement came, and I felt numb. No tears, no pleading, no shouting. Just a hollow ache where the hope used to be. The deepest cut that time wasn't the exclusion itself, but seeing the guest list later, a list that Mom accidentally left on the kitchen counter. My cousin Amanda, who was just barely 18, was listed as invited. The cutoff wasn't no children. It was clearly no one under 18. I had been excluded from Josh's wedding, not because I was a child, but because I was simply deemed too young, too unimportant to be considered an adult member of the family unit that mattered for their big day. Old enough to feel the rejection, not old enough to be included. That was the final straw. 4 siblings, 4 weddings, 4 exclusions. Different excuses, different age cutoffs, but always the same result. It wasn't accidental. It wasn't not personal. It was a pattern. It was who I was to them, the sister they could conveniently leave behind. The one whose feelings didn't count as much as arbitrary guest list rules or the opinions of extended family. The one who was always just a child in their eyes, even when she was old enough to feel the sting of their rejection like an adult. The wall around my heart became a fortress. I stopped trying to be part of their lives. I stopped trying to earn their acceptance. I retreated emotionally, focusing on building a life that was entirely my own outside of their expectations and their world. Life went on. I went to college, chose a major that interested me, built my own circle of friends, focused on my studies, my work. I stopped trying to force a connection with my siblings, tired of always being the one reaching out, the one whose calls weren't returned, the one whose life events, graduations, getting my first apartment promotions, received only perfunctory acknowledgement, usually from Mom relaying information. Then I met Daniel. He was everything they weren't. Kind, attentive, genuinely interested in who I was, what I thought, what I felt. He saw me Evelyn, not just the youngest sister, not the deli girl, not the one who caused drama. He was the first person who truly listened to me, not just heard me speak. As our relationship deepened, I hesitantly, vulnerably told him about my family, about the 4 weddings, the exclusions, the years of feeling like an outsider, like an afterthought. Daniel's reaction wasn't the dismissive, "Oh, family can be complicated, you should just let it go," I had heard from others. He was genuinely shocked. His eyes widened. "That's messed up, Evie." He said using the nickname only he was allowed to use now, a nickname that, in his voice, lost its association with the little girl who was left out and became a term of endearment, a sign of his affection. That's not just a little weird family dynamic. That's not normal. To exclude your own sister from 4 weddings because she was too young, that's really crummy behavior. That's not okay. Hearing someone else, someone whose opinion I deeply respected, someone whose love made me feel seen and valued, validate my feelings, call their actions exactly what they were, crummy behavior, unfair, messed up, was incredibly freeing. It was like a heavy burden I had carried for years was finally lifted. For years, I had rationalized their actions, made excuses for them, blamed myself for being too sensitive, too young, too much drama. Daniel helped me see that my pain was valid, that their actions were indeed hurtful and abnormal, and that I deserved better. He helped me understand that their behavior wasn't a reflection of my worth, but a reflection of their own limitations, their own priorities, their own failure to see me as a full, valuable member of the family unit that mattered. He was my anchor, pulling me out of the sea of self-doubt and hurt I had been drowning in. He showed me what unconditional acceptance felt like. In the years I spent building my own life, separate from my family's expectations, I discovered that family isn't just about blood. My college friends became my chosen sisters, celebrating my small victories and offering support during setbacks. My colleagues in a supportive work environment became like mentors and siblings, valuing my contributions and my presence. Even my old neighbor from childhood, Mrs. Rodriguez, a sweet elderly woman, continued to offer me cookies and a listening ear, her small acts of kindness filling a void I hadn't known how to articulate. These people, the ones who showed up, listened, and genuinely cared, became my chosen family. They, not my blood relatives, taught me what unconditional love and acceptance truly felt like. They were the ones who deserved a place at my table. When Daniel and I got engaged, there was no question in my mind about who would be on the guest list. Our wedding wouldn't be about seeking validation from those who had withheld it. It would be a celebration of the love we had found, the life we were building, and the family that had chosen me and whom I had chosen in return. I made the decision calmly, deliberately. I would not invite my siblings or my parents who had enabled, enforced, and punished me for reacting to the exclusions. It wasn't a spontaneous act of anger, but a decision made with clear eyes and a peaceful heart. It was simply removing their names from the list, a quiet, determined act of reclaiming my own narrative, my own life, my own emotional space. I knew there would be backlash. I knew they would be angry, hurt, and humiliated. But I was ready. Daniel was ready with me. Which brings us back to that Tuesday afternoon phone call. Mom's shock, her outrage, her accusations, her barely concealed humiliation. "You're hurting us, Evelyn!" She cried, her voice dripping with self-pity and disbelief that I would dare to turn the tables. "You're tearing the family apart. How can you be so selfish after everything we did for you?" "Selfish?" I repeated, the calm, still holding a shield against her attempts to manipulate me with guilt. "Is it selfish, Mom, to not invite people who made me feel like an unwanted stranger in my own home at their most important life events? Is it selfish to not include people in my most important day when they deliberately and repeatedly excluded me from theirs again and again for arbitrary reasons?" That was different. She insisted, clinging to her justification. "You were a child." Exactly. I shot back the years of frustration, finding voice controlled, now precise, undeniable. I was a child when you made me feel invisible. I was a child when I cried myself to sleep because I couldn't go to my own brother's wedding. I was a teenager when you grounded me for 6 months for daring to express how hurt and unfair it all felt. And now that I'm an adult, the one you couldn't wait to see grow up, you expect me to just forget it, to sweep it all under the rug, to pretend it didn't happen just because it's inconvenient for you now, because you want to show off your successful daughter at my wedding. No, Mom, I was a child then. I'm an adult now. And as an adult, I get to choose who I share my life with, who I want standing beside me. And I choose people who actually showed up for me when it mattered, people who saw me. My father got on the phone, then his voice gruff, trying to assert authority to bring me back in line. "Evelyn, this is ridiculous. Holding on to the past. Be an adult. Let it go." "I am being an adult, Dad," I said, my voice unwavering, strong. Being an adult means setting boundaries. Being an adult means recognizing toxic patterns and refusing to participate in them. Being an adult means protecting myself from people who have consistently shown they don't value my feelings, my presence, my worth. You want me to be an adult now that it suits you now that my wedding is a social event you want to attend. But where were you being adults when you let your 10-year-old daughter feel like she wasn't good enough to attend her own brother's wedding? Mom started to cry again, more intensely dramatically this time, sensing she was losing control of the narrative, losing her ability to manipulate me. Family is forever, Evelyn. Friends and partners come and go, but family is blood. You can't just cut off your own blood. Family is not just blood, Mom. I countered, my voice firm, stating the truth I had learned through painful experience, and Daniel's unwavering love, the love of my chosen family. Family is love. Family is respect. Family is showing up. Family is caring about someone's feelings even when they're just a child. Family is being present for the big moments and the small ones. You haven't been that family for me, not when it mattered most. My family, my real family, will be at my wedding. She wailed, a sound of pure wounded entitlement of a parent who suddenly realized their child was no longer theirs to control or dismiss. You'll regret this, Evelyn. When we're gone, you'll be alone. You'll wish you had us. You'll see. A profound sense of peace settled over me, deeper than I had ever felt before. It wasn't sadness or regret or fear of being alone. It was the quiet, unshakable certainty that I had made the right decision, the decision to finally choose myself. I don't think I will, Mom, I said calmly, honestly. I don't think I'll regret choosing peace and respect and genuine love over obligation and pain and a history of being left out. I didn't wait for her response. I said, "Goodbye, Mom," and I hung up the phone. The phone immediately began ringing again, almost before I set it down. And again, texts poured in from my siblings, Michael, Chris, Josh, Rachel, and various aunts and cousins who had heard the news. A barrage of anger, confusion, accusations. Scarlett's texts were particularly vicious, cutting, laced with the familiar cruelty I had grown up with. "You're just doing this for attention," she texted. "Trying to make us look bad, you're pathetic." Initially, the old programming kicked in. The muscle memory of wanting to defend myself, to explain, to justify my actions, to fight back against the distorted narrative they were already spinning on social media and with other relatives. She's gone crazy. She's making things up. She's always been dramatic. But Daniel stopped me. He found me standing by the window phone in hand, the barrage of messages of physical weight. "Don't, Evie," he said gently, taking the phone from my hand. "Don't engage. They'll just twist your words. They don't want to understand. They want to hurt you because you finally took away their power to hurt you on their terms. Your truth isn't for them to understand right now. It's for you. Let them be angry. Let them talk. Their anger isn't about you not inviting them to the wedding. It's about them realizing you won't play their game anymore. It's about them losing control. You don't owe them an explanation. You don't owe them your peace." He was right. I didn't owe them anything. Not my time, not my energy, not my emotional well-being. They had made me feel invisible, unimportant, and consistently hurt for years. Now I was taking back control of my own visibility, my own life, my own happiness. With Daniel's unwavering support, I did it. One by one, I blocked their numbers. I unfollowed and muted them on social media. I removed myself from the toxic family group chats. I cut the cord decisively and completely. The initial silence that followed felt strange, even lonely at times. The absence of their chaotic presence, their demands, their criticisms. But it was a clean silence, free from the constant low hum of disapproval, expectation, and veiled judgment that had been the soundtrack of my life for so long. It was the silence of liberation. The wedding day arrived. Against the backdrop of the earlier storm, it felt incredibly peaceful. There was a mix of joyful anticipation and a lingering, almost subconscious bracing of vigilance I had honed over the years, waiting for drama to arrive at the gate. But it never did. The day unfolded exactly as it was meant to. The ceremony was held in the beautiful botanical garden, small, intimate, filled with the scent of blooming roses and the quiet presence of about 50 people. Not hundreds, as some of my siblings' weddings had been, but 50 people who were genuinely wholeheartedly happy for me. Daniel's kind, welcoming family who embraced me as one of their own from the moment they met me. My loyal friends from college and work who had stood by me through different struggles, including the one with my family. My Aunt Carol, who had been invited, and came giving me a tearful hug before the ceremony, and telling me privately that my grandfather Mateo would have been so proud to see me so strong and happy. My old neighbor from childhood, Mrs. Rodriguez, a sweet elderly woman who had always offered me cookies and a listening ear, her small acts of kindness filling a void I hadn't known how to articulate until much later. These were my people, my family, the ones who had seen me, supported me, loved me unconditionally often, when my own blood didn't or couldn't. Standing there holding Daniel's hands, saying our vows under a canopy of ancient trees surrounded by the smiles and tears of people who genuinely cared, who were truly present in that moment for me. I felt a profound sense of belonging I had never experienced before. The air wasn't thick with expectation or tension. It was light, filled with love, acceptance, and the quiet joy of being truly seen. The reception that followed was simple, elegant, joyful, a true celebration of connection and the building of a new life. I laughed, I danced, I shared stories, not rehearsed anecdotes to impress, but real stories with people who wanted to hear them. And in those moments surrounded by my chosen family, I realized I had everything I needed, everything I truly valued, and not a single bit of it came from the people who shared my last name by birth. The pain of the past, the 4 empty seats that represented years of exclusion, didn't vanish completely in a puff of wedding cake. The scars were still there, faint lines etched onto my heart. But they no longer defined me. They were reminders of the journey, of the hard lessons learned, of the strength it took to heal and rebuild. I realized then that their exclusion from my wedding wasn't my loss. It was theirs. They had missed out on witnessing the joy, the peace, the genuine love of the woman I had become, the woman who was finally seen and cherished for exactly who she was. They had missed out on seeing the beautiful family I had built, not out of obligation or biology, but out of shared humanity, respect, and true affection. I no longer yearned for their approval. I no longer felt that constant aching sense of not being enough. My worth wasn't determined by whether they invited me to their parties or approved of my choices, but by the love in Daniel's eyes, the laughter of my friends, the quiet, steady support of my chosen family. Yes, setting boundaries, especially with family, makes the people who benefited from your lack of boundaries uncomfortable, even angry. Their accusations, their attempts to manipulate were proof of that. But protecting myself, honoring my own feelings, choosing my own peace, that was the ultimate necessary act of self-love and survival. I chose my own path. I chose my own happiness. I chose my own family. And standing there on my wedding day, surrounded by love, I knew with absolute certainty that I didn't regret a single thing. I was free. After Evelyn Ramirez finally chose herself and built her own family, leaving behind those who had consistently excluded and hurt her. When faced with such deep-seated exclusion and hurt from family members, is cutting ties completely the only way to find true peace, or are there other paths to healing? And how does the love and acceptance from a chosen family compare to the complex, often painful bonds of the family you were born into?